Once the Battle of France was already two-thirds won by Hitler, Il Duce declared war on Paris and London.
When we heard declaration of war, we went, yeah, we were all so happy. An old man came out of his house and said to us, "You're so delusional. You have no idea what war means. Pain, disease, death, disaster." And we all shouted, "What a defeatist."
For Italians, the hour of truth had come. For the past 2 decades, their leader had promised them glory. They could not imagine the scale of the defeats that lay in store. Having launched an assault on the Alps, the Italians were unable to breach French defenses. After 3 days of fighting, they had gained only a few kilometers, on the Riviera and in Savoy. Following the armistice signed with the Vichy regime, Mussolini was granted a small strip of land at the border, nothing compared to what he had hoped for. But the worst was yet to come. When Hitler occupied Romania, Mussolini decided to launch an offensive against Greece. A solo and secret headlong rush. He only informed Hitler at the last moment on his visit to Florence. "Führer, we are on the march." At dawn, victorious Italian troops crossed the Greece-Albania border. Mussolini was convinced of a sweeping victory.
Ora, con la stessa certezza assoluta, vi dico che spezzeremo le reni alla Grecia. Da germanici e italiani siamo un blocco di 150 milioni di uomini. Questo blocco ha già nel pugno la vittoria.
Once again, he was dreaming. Within days, his advance was blocked by the stubborn resistance of the Greeks and turned into a disaster. 3 months later, the Italian army had retreated to its own territory. Not only a disaster, but total humiliation. When Hitler dispatched backup troops, it took them only 3 weeks to defeat and occupy Greece. For Il Duce, this was only the beginning of his cavalry. For in Libya as well, Hitler had come to the rescue by sending in Rommel, one of his top generals. Targeting the Suez Canal, Il Duce believed he could occupy Egypt. But after advancing across the desert, his army was cut off by the British. And to make matters worse, Churchill, his former admirer, stole the jewel in Mussolini's empire's crown, Ethiopia, only 5 years after conquering it. Mussolini was broken, despite the brave face he put on. His strategy was a failure. He suffered from a stomach ulcer and lumbago, and he relieved his anxieties at the commands of his private bomber, flying for hours across the Italian skies. Between bouts of depression and euphoria, he also found time to speed around the Italian countryside in his Alfa Romeo. He sometimes went days without eating. He laid the blame on the Italians. I am humiliated for not having turned them into a people of steel and bravery. He decided to stick with his friend Hitler until the end. "We are not whores," he replied to those who were already urging him to break with the Nazis. He even insisted that the Führer allow him to send men to the Soviet Union alongside German troops. Italians were now dying in their thousands on every front. Like Marta Badoni's brother, an officer in the Italian Navy who was torpedoed in the Mediterranean.
The notion of fascism and all that was swept away with my brother's death. It was a complete disaster. The end of politics for me.
Late 1942 was the turning point. Having landed in North Africa, the Allies bombarded Italy. The myth of Il Duce was collapsing under a rain of bombs. In Rome, Mussolini had a number of bunkers constructed beneath the Villa Torlonia to protect his wife and children. "I'm glad that Naples is going through such terrible nights," he said. "It will make the race stronger." He showed no emotion on learning of the Nazi genocide of the Jews. He was obsessed by his failures and began blaming his aides, especially his son-in-law Ciano, who wanted to break with Germany. Mussolini relieved him of his post as foreign minister. His mistress, Clara Petacci, discovered him on the floor, leaning against an armchair. She tried to encourage him. "You are the man for a titanic battle." On morphine when the pain was too acute, he continued to put up a front. But for how long? In Rome, more and more rumors about an uprising began to circulate. He pretended to ignore them. On July 9, 1943, came the event that would result in his fall. Sailing from Africa, the Allies landed in Sicily. "The moment the enemy tries to land," screamed Mussolini, "we must wipe out every last one of them." But that did not come to pass. Il Duce had been speaking with empty rhetoric for so long that his troops had stopped listening. In Rome, backed by the king and the business community, high-ranking fascist party officials, Mussolini's brothers in arms since the beginning, decided to spark a revolt. It started 2 weeks later at the Palazzo Venezia, at a meeting of the Grand Council of Fascism. "Have them all arrested," his wife said before the meeting. But Mussolini had stopped taking advice from anyone. After 21 years in power, he was voted out in a few hours by his fellow party members.
We were totally lost. We thought, what do we do now?
I thought it was about time there was a rebellion.
Among the rebels was his son-in-law Ciano. The former foreign minister wanted to break the military alliance with Germany, which he had signed himself in 1939.
Ciano betrayed Mussolini in a despicable manner. He should have been shot in the back like all traitors.
And it wasn't long coming. For now, Mussolini was arrested in the name of the king, secretly imprisoned on an island off Sardinia, then transferred to an alpine resort hotel 100 kilometers from Rome. "My star has been extinguished forever," he said.
And that was the end of an era.
Però, subito dopo,
But the situation immediately turned into a tragedy.
molto tragiche.
For once again, Hitler decided to come to his allies' aid. He dispatched a commando of paratroopers to rescue him from captivity. Having successfully landed their glider on a high plain, they disarmed the guards and filmed the scene. "Duce, you are free." "Do what you will with me. I need to rest," replied Mussolini, who knew that history had escaped him.
I scream with joy.
E quindi diciamo, "Ma
We thought, what can't these Germans do?
questi tedeschi..."
But I must say, we felt sorry for Mussolini.
Un senso di pena. Era malinconico vedere questo che era stato.
It was sad to see this
così
once great man like that,
e vederlo con
in his little overcoat and little hat.
quel cappello.
Evacuated to Germany, he was met by Hitler, who greeted him with tearful eyes. A finished man in a daze was how he was described by his son Vittorio, who was present. The failed strategist made no requests, just that he be allowed to retire to his native region of Romagna. But for now, this wasn't in Hitler's plans. The Führer, who had treated him equally until then, now gave an order. "There's not a day to lose. Tomorrow you will announce on the radio that the monarchy is deposed and a new Italian fascist state is born." And to make sure he understood, he implied that if he refused, the cities of Milan, Turin, and Genoa would be wiped off the map.
Il Duce parla agli italiani. Missioniere, italiani e italiane, dopo un lungo silenzio, ecco che nuovamente vi giunge la mia voce. E sono sicuro che voi la riconoscete. È la voce che vi ha chiamato a raccolta nei momenti